Emily has always loved traveling and exploring places where humans have rarely set foot. Her dream was to find the forgotten corners of the world and experience their secret atmosphere. But one day her thirst for adventure took her too far. It was in the fall. Emily heard from the locals of a small village in the mountains that there was an old abandoned lake in their forest. Legend had it that something used to live there that pulled people into the water, never to return. Many of the locals told how their relatives or friends had gone to the lake one day and never came back. They warned Emily not to go there, but she only smiled. She thought such stories were just figments of the imagination. She was more attracted to the mysterious lake and the possible beautiful views for pictures. She decided to go there alone because none of the locals dared to accompany her. When she entered the forest, it was as if the air around her became heavier. The trees, whose branches resembled twisted fingers, whispered in the wind, making the forest feel like it had a life of its own. The leaves on the ground were soft, but their crunch underfoot sounded especially loud in the oppressive silence. After a couple hours, Emily reached the lake. The water was as black as all and seemed to absorb the light. There were no birds or other sounds of nature around. Emily felt a chill that chilled her to the bone. She stopped to catch her breath and suddenly noticed that the silence had become ringing. No breeze, no sounds of the forest. Just her breathing and the rustle of the grass beneath her feet. She pulled out her camera to take pictures, but as soon as she raised the camera, a whisper came from the lake. The whisper was barely perceptible, as if someone was talking right behind her back. She turned sharply, but saw no one. The sound came again, and this time it was louder. She realized it was coming from the water. The whisper sounded like a voice calling her name. Emily felt a shiver run through her body, but she was curious. She moved closer to the water's edge, gazing into its surface. The water was perfectly smooth, like a mirror, but as she gazed, shadows began to rise from the depths. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the water, black as the depth of the lake itself, with eyes that glowed with an eerie blue light. Its body looked as if it was made of water, yet it retained horrifyingly clear features. The figure stopped right at the water's edge, and the whispering stopped. Emily couldn't move. The creature held out its arm, inviting her to come closer. Her feet felt like they were stuck to the ground. She felt her mind being sucked into the dark void emanating from the creature's eyes. Emily began to take steps forward without realizing it until her consciousness shrieked from within. At the last moment, she heard a scream from the back of her mind that brought her back to reality. She took a sharp step backward, stumbled, and fell to the ground. The creature began to move again, as if slowly emerging from the water. Emily jumped up and ran deep into the forest. Her feet tangled in the roots, but she didn't look back. She knew it was there. She heard a whisper begin to follow her, but this time it didn't sound quiet. It became ominous, insistent. When Emily ran out into a small clearing, she saw an old, dilapidated hunting cabin. There was light shining through its window, and she rushed in, looking for escape. The inside of the cabin smelled damp and musty, but it seemed the best shelter. She slammed the door behind her and held her breath. The light inside had faded, and the cabin was plunged into darkness. She stood in silence, hearing only the pounding of her heart. Her gaze caught the mirror on the wall, and she saw movement there. It was not she in the mirror. It showed a figure slowly approaching her from behind. Emily turned around and screamed. In front of her was the same creature again, whose eyes shone with the same ominous light. It slowly raised its hand as if trying to touch her. Emily grabbed a heavy candlestick and struck the mirror, shattering it. At the same moment, the light returned and the creature disappeared. She ran out of the cabin and ran away. The forest no longer seemed quiet. It was full of the sounds of her fear. When she reached the village, she told her story, but no one believed her. People looked at her with pity and fear, but no one came up to support her. No one has seen Emily since then. However, the locals began to notice that new whispers began to appear on the lake. They were calling out a different name already. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new exciting and creepy stories. Like and share with your friends to support us in creating even more content.